Hi, guys. Welcome to this week's episode of Latest with Lily, my show where I talk about all things sports, but with an emphasis on football and baseball, and of course, a little bit of hockey. I start off by talking a little bit, then I bring on my very special guest, talk a little bit more, and then it's time for everybody's favorite segment, Last Minute with Lily, where I give you guys as many fun sports tidbits of the week as I can in just 60 seconds. It is very cool, so you guys should stick around. I just want to give a little disclaimer. My voice sounds a little bit squeaky right now, a little bit prepubescent boy right now, but I'm just a bit sick, so try to bear with me for it. Hopefully, it's not that noticeable. But let's just get right into it. Okay, as always, I want to start off by talking about my Pittsburgh Steelers. As you can see, I have my TJ Watt jersey on right now, and I'm just so happy because for the second week in a row, the Steelers have been playing winning football, which is something I just can't take for granted these days. The Steelers beat Marcus Mariota and the Atlanta Falcons 19-16 on Sunday. And although the game was close, I still think this was a solid performance from the team. Not great by any stretch of the imagination, but still solid. Kenny Pickett threw a really nice touchdown to Cam Hayward's little brother, Connor Hayward, which I thought was really cool. And tight end Pat Fryermuth had a great game with 3 catches for 76 yards, one of his best games yet for the budding star. On the defensive side, only 1 sack, which is unusual for the Steelers, I know, but it came from Cam Hayward, so good day for the Haywards. But we only held them to 16 points, which is phenomenal, so I'm happy with the defense. And of course, there was a classic Minkah Fitzpatrick interception. So overall, I am happy. And you can call me a delusional Steelers fan all you want, but I truly do believe that we have the ability, with the guidance of Coach Mike Tomlin, of course, to just run the table and sneak our way into the playoffs. Crazier things have happened, and I have faith. I mean, if you think about it, next week we play, the Ravens, and Lamar Jackson is injured, so we're playing Tyler Huntley. That's a winnable game. And then we have the Panthers, and then I think the Raiders, both of which are also winnable games. So it can happen. Just trust me. All right. No more Steelers talk for now, but that can always change. It's time to bring on our very special guest. And he is extra special because he is our first recurring guest. Mostly because I've begun to run out of friends that are super knowledgeable about sports, and he happened to be free tonight, so it kind of worked out. But I'm very happy to have him back. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Miguel Munoz. Woo! Hi, Miguel.
Hi, thanks for having me again.
Are you happy to be the first recurring guest?
Yes, it's an honor to be asked. It's an honor to be back. I'm so excited, as you can tell.
I know. I hear the excitement in your voice.
So happy.
Wow. Thank you so much for joining us, Miguel, taking time out of your busy schedule to be on this wonderful show. All right, let's stop the joking around and get straight into the sports talk.
Yes.
I want to talk about baseball because I feel like we give football too much love on the show. We got to talk some baseball. And you might be thinking, "Wait, Lily, what are you talking about? The baseball season has been over for months. What is there to talk about?" And to that, I'll give you 6 words. Aaron Judge, Jacob DeGrom, Justin Verlander. And those 6
That
words.
was smooth.
What?
That was smooth.
It was smooth, right? I didn't even practice it. Okay.
Continue.
But to you, at least, yeah. Maybe to myself. Who knows what goes into the behind-the-scenes work of Latest with Lily? You have to be a guest to find out. But all right. Anyway, those guys are really the talk of the town right now, but for separate reasons. I mean, some of them stayed, some of them departed in free agency, but all of them are very interesting. So I want to talk about these 3 guys, but I want to start it off with my favorite non-Pirate player, Aaron Judge. So my question for you, Miguel, is do you think that Aaron Judge's contract is warranted, or do you think that it was an overpay, or perhaps too many years? So,
yeah.
Go into it.
I mean, I would say Judge's contract, of course it's warranted. Aaron Judge is one of the best players in the league. Nobody can argue against that. He really was the powerhouse for the Yankees. It was 62 this year or 63? How many ended with home runs?
63, I think.
63? Okay, yeah. He had 63 home runs this year. Incredible feat for him. And I mean, everybody saw it coming. Of course, he's going to get this kind of contract. So
Yeah.
the Yankees were not going to get him if they didn't pay him something like this. So personally, I would say this is not a bad deal for the Yankees to make. They're keeping their best player. Of course, they're giving up a lot of money, but in
Yeah.
baseball, long-term contracts like this are not abnormal. So it's kind of just expected that Judge would expect a contract like this and get a contract like this. And recently, news has come in that the Padres even offered him $400 million for 10 years, and he still decided to stay with the Yankees. So yeah, I don't think that this is that big of an issue for the Yankees, especially considering how much the Yankees are like the richest team in the
Yeah.
MLB. So it's
Exactly.
not a huge issue for a team like them. So
Yeah.
I have no problems with it overall.
I feel like that's very fair. I mean, just to preface it, in case you guys don't know, it was a $360 million deal for 9 years, which is pretty incredible. But we've seen in recent years more and more major contracts across all sports leagues, not just the MLB. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm of a similar mindset. I love Judge. I love what he's done for the Yankees. But when I saw the details of the deal, my first thought was on the 9 years. It was like, wow,
Mhm.
9 years. That's a really long time because who knows if Judge is even going to be half the player that he is right now in a decade.
No,
Nine
of
years is
course not.
a long time. Like, we don't know what could happen with injuries or aging or anything like that. That's just so up in the air. But my best guess is in year 8 or year 9 of that deal, the Yankees will be on the losing side of it. But yeah, I really doubt he's going to be like a 40 million a year caliber player in 9 years. But that being said, I mean, that doesn't really matter because Judge is an insanely valuable player right now, and he will be for the next several years, I'm sure of it. If you got rid of Judge, you're going to be looking for his replacement immediately, and I doubt you'll find anybody of his caliber at least right away.
Yeah.
So, I think that would be just a pretty unwise move to get rid of Judge. They sucked it up. They paid their guy because he's their guy. He pretty much single-handedly muscled them into a playoff spot last year, and I expect he's going to continue to carry the team in a similar manner next year. So letting him walk would just be shameful. I think if the choice is between paying a guy too much for a little too long or getting rid of your star player, I think you have to go with the former. I think that's the smart choice. So I agree with you. I think it was wise. But I mean, I can see the side of it where it's like 9 years, that's just a little too long, or like 360 million. Like, do we really need to be paying him what 40 million a year? Would it be that? It seems like a lot, but I think in this league it's warranted.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's shift a little to the other New York team because we could talk about Judge forever. That contract was so high profile, just came in on Tuesday. But I want to talk Mets a little bit because there's been some interesting pitching developments with the Mets. Jacob deGrom, former Mets ace, signed a 5-year, $185 million contract with the Texas Rangers. So, after losing their star pitcher in free agency, the Mets responded quite well by signing former Astros star pitcher Justin Verlander to a 2-year, $87 million contract, I think, which was a pretty incredible comeback from losing Jacob deGrom. But what do you think, Miguel? Do you think it was a mistake by the Mets not to re-sign deGrom, or do you think this was a solid move and Verlander can easily fill his shoes?
I mean, I think overall DeGrom is I think he's still a better player in the long term than Verlander. Verlander is what, 40 now? He's very
Yeah,
old. He's getting up there. Uh,
39.
yeah, I mean, overall, I think the Mets do lose this. I think DeGrom is a better player that you want in your long term as compared
Yeah.
to Verlander. Even in the win now, I would prefer DeGrom to Verlander. I know Verlander's a great player, don't get me wrong, but I think DeGrom is still a better pitcher overall. Um, but I think the Mets didn't make a huge mistake here. Verlander was clearly going for the money. You don't sign with Texas Rangers unless you want money. He's not looking to win. I
You
don't
mean
think.
deGrom was going for money?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay, yeah.
DeGrom was going for money. The Rangers, I expect them to remain mediocre, to be honest, because it's the
I
Rangers.
agree, yeah.
And Verlander, I think that's a win for both sides. The Mets, that's a great deal for them to get after the fact, like after losing DeGrom. That was the best move they could have made. And yeah, I don't hate the fact that they let go of DeGrom. To be honest, it would have been nice to keep him, but
Yeah.
I think as a Mets fan, you live with that.
That's fair. I agree. I think I'm a bit higher on this trade, or not trade, but higher on these free agency signings than you are for the Mets. I think this probably worked out, better than anyone could have hoped. Any Mets fan could have hoped because my philosophy on Jacob deGrom was yes, he is phenomenal. No one can deny that. But there is no use in having a phenomenal pitcher in your rotation that you're paying hundreds of millions of dollars for him to sit on your bench and be injured for half the season. And that's been the trouble with Jacob deGrom for years now. It's just not worth it, especially now when you're paying, all these players so much money, not just your stars. You're paying your mediocre guys a lot of money too. So I just think it wasn't worth it for the Mets. But Justin Verlander, although he is up there in age, he is almost 40. He's undoubtedly been less injured than DeGrom in recent years. And he's just coming off a Cy Young win, his third Cy Young win, which is fantastic. It doesn't seem like he's slowing down in any regards. And I think the switch just makes so much sense, even for DeGrom. Like you said, of course, going to the Texas Rangers means he was looking for money. You don't sign with the Rangers after being with a pretty successful Mets team, unless you're looking for money, which is fine. I mean, that's fine. But I do think this might be good for DeGrom in a sense because the Rangers are a much worse and less exciting team. But I think DeGrom needs a culture change because some guys really do thrive under playing sports in the big, bright New York City lights. But for other guys, that just doesn't work. And I think that DeGrom, even at his peak performance, when he was doing, fantastic, pretty healthy, never really felt like he truly was at home or truly was like a real Met, at least in my opinion. But I think this culture change could be helpful for him, and he really could find his place as a Ranger.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh my gosh, I'm like holding in coughs right now. This is not good. Okay, my bad, guys. But let's shift a bit from baseball back to football. I know I was talking about the Steelers, but this is good because while I cough, I can have myself on mute and Miguel can talk because it's time for fantasy football stardoms, situms. This is one of my favorite segments. It's a fan favorite segment. We brought it back from, Brian week 4 doing this. So from what I've heard, Miguel is only just okay at fantasy football.
Yeah.
But I trust. No, Miguel, be real with us.
No, I'm being real. I'm not a very good fantasy football manager.
Okay, so you admit it. That's good, at least for having a full transparency on the show. I appreciate that. But Miguel, please give us, so I can stop coughing, your first stardom that all our viewers should start if they want to win their fantasy matchup this week.
All right, so I feel like every smart fantasy manager should know this by now, but my first stardom is going to be Latavius Murray. He's clearly taken a starting role in the Denver backfield, and with Russell Wilson obviously struggling this year, I think Denver has seemed to be relying more and more on Latavius Murray. In the last 3 weeks, Latavius Murray has had 10-plus carries with 17, 13, and 17 in the last 3 respective weeks, and has also had 4 catches, 1 catch, and 4 catches. And he's combined for over 70 yards, all-purpose yards in each of those games. He's been a solid player overall. Denver's trying to get him the ball as much as they can, especially as I said, as he becomes a number 1 running back in their backfield. And I think you can't go wrong. I know they're playing Kansas City, but the Chiefs are still ranked as 23rd in the league in giving up points to running backs this fantasy season. So I think that's a great reason for Latavius Murray to be a start, especially as a flex option if you have him. Secondly, a lesser known sort of player. He's only been rostered on 52.4% of ESPN leagues. But Zonovan Knight, he has really emerged as a number 1 running back for the Jets amid their backfield injuries. After not having a single carry attempt all season from week 1 to week 11, Knight has had 14 and 15 carries respectively in weeks 12 and 13. And despite playing Buffalo, I think he's still going to get a majority of the carries. And I think this Jets offense will struggle in the passing game. So they'll definitely have to rely on a strong backfield in order to keep them close against obviously a very potent Buffalo offense. So they're going to try to keep the scoring up. So they're definitely going to have to rely on Zonovan Knight. So yeah, that's my second stardom. And I guess we go to situms now.
Yeah, we can go to Sims. I really like both your picks, especially Knight, because I think the Jets have a great team, and if they want, any hope of finishing out the season strong and making the playoffs, they're not going to be able to rely on their quarterback room because that consists of Zach Wilson, Mike White, and somehow still Joe Flacco, I think. So I think, yeah, the Jets are definitely going to be relying on their running backs, and since their running back room is also injured, then Knight is a good pick. So very insightful, Miguel. Okay, yes, give us your Sims.
Okay, so unfortunately, my first sit-em is going to be Darius Slayton of the New York Giants. Giant fans don't hate me for this, but I'm going to have to go with him. I know recent weeks he's been solid. He's had 10 plus points in 3 of the last 4 weeks in fantasy, but he does face probably his toughest matchup of the year in the Philadelphia Eagles, who have one of the best defenses in the league, obviously. And I don't know. I just think this entire Giants offense is going to surely struggle against the Eagles. The Eagles have a they're number 6 ranked in terms of fantasy points given up to wide receivers. So they're a solid team in terms of that. And I just don't think you can have faith in any Giants wide receivers for this matchup. It's going to be a tough game for them. And I think they're just going to have to rely on Saquon.
Yeah, that's fair. I completely agree.
And then my second one, unfortunately, it's not his fault, but I'm going to have to go with George Kittle. And this is only because Jimmy G is most likely out for the entire season after his injury against the Dolphins.
Sad. It's so sad.
Yeah. And, I don't hate Brock Purdy, to be honest, the Niners backup quarterback, but he obviously won't be able to get Kittle the ball nearly as much as Garoppolo did. And I think they're going to rely a lot more on the running game as well as Debo, who's just like, he can do everything. And I don't think they're going to rely as much on having Brock Purdy get it to their tight end. And to be honest, Kittle has been a little bit disappointing in the last 4 weeks. He had a great week 11, but otherwise he's had sub 6 points in the last 3 of the last 4 weeks. So yeah, I just don't think. I mean, if you have Kittle, I guess you start him, but he's really not an option that I want to have right now.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's kind of crazy that we're going to be talking about these 49ers guys and saying, you should sit them this week, you should sit them for the playoffs because, of course, they're usually like money makers when it comes to fantasy. But when you have Jimmy Garoppolo throwing to you, that's even a little bit hard. But when you have Brock Purdy throwing to you, it's just a game changer. And it's sad because you're right. It wasn't Kittle's fault. It's not his fault. But yeah, it's a smart fantasy move to be sitting your 49ers offensive players right now, but not really their running backs because they're going to be relying on those a lot more. But yeah, definitely wide receiver, tight end, pass catchers. But all right, those were some great stardom Sims, Miguel. Thank you very much for saving me during my coughing fit. I really appreciate it. But yeah, that was some good timing. But hopefully I'll be all right for the rest of the show. But let's shift a bit, but still stick with football. But like specifically, I want to talk about New York football because we are in New York. But the Jets and Giants, unfortunately, left this week winless. And if you didn't get a chance to watch both games this week, because they were both at the same time, which is really bad scheduling, but don't worry because Miguel and I are going to give you a little overview breakdown of both the Jets and the Giants game because we're just that good. Mm-hmm. So I will start with the Giants. All right. I guess saying that the New York football teams didn't win this week might have misled you a bit because the Giants actually tied the Washington Commanders 20-20. And personally, I have a love-hate relationship with ties in football because they are really cool and they rarely happen and they're super unique and fun. But when it's your team, it's literally the worst. It's so defeating. You can't even have the closure of a loss, let alone like the satisfaction of a win after watching your team throughout an entire game and then an entire overtime. That's just the worst feeling. But since it wasn't my team, I was very excited that the Giants and Commanders tied. But anyway, the quarterbacks Daniel Jones and Taylor Heinicke both had pretty respectable games, with Jones throwing a touchdown, Heinicke throwing 2 touchdowns, and neither of them with any interceptions. So it wasn't a sloppy game. The Giants really spread the love defensively as 5 different players recorded sacks. The Commanders sacked Jones 3 times, with Darren Payne recording 2 of the sacks. And overall, I think it's obvious that this wasn't a phenomenal performance by either team, by any stretch of the imagination. But for this Giants team, whose record has greatly misrepresented their roster talent, in my opinion, I was not surprised by their performance this week in any particular way. This was, not a tie wasn't expected, but a lackluster performance definitely was, at least in my opinion. So, Miguel, why don't you give us a breakdown of the Jets game?
Yeah, first I want to disagree with you on the ties. I think they're
Oh.
completely stupid.
What?
I think the NFL should adopt college football rules for overtime.
Okay.
Ties should not exist in football, personally.
Well, wait, do you ever watch Stay Hot podcast on TikTok with you've heard me talk about it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the guys on there, Matthew Sponhour, I love watching him. He talks about sports, and he is a big fan of ties. And at first, I was of your mindset. I was like, ties are stupid in football. I like the college football overtime rules. But then I was like, you know what? Ties are so rare, and they don't, bother me so much because it only happens to your team like once every 10 years. That it's just so fun to root for a tie because it messes up everyone's record. There's like a third number at the end of the record. It's just fun.
I hate it so much.
Okay, whatever. Agree to disagree, but I feel like I'm right about this. Guys, wait. All of our viewers who are watching live, comment down below. Do you like ties or do you not like ties? Miguel or Lily? Who do you side with here?
Let's see if we get any comments.
All our 4 viewers live right now. Okay, moving on. Tell us about the Jets, Miguel.
Yeah, so this was a very disappointing game. I would say on both sides, to be honest, for the Vikings, because they did not expect this game to be as close as it was with the Jets, especially after being up 20-3 at halftime, I believe. The Vikings really pulled away to end the half. They had a touchdown and then a field goal after being up 10-3, extended to 17, but then the Jets clawed their way back, had, I believe, 5 field goals actually before getting a touchdown. So they had 15 points and then a touchdown to give it to 22. Vikings ended up winning 27-22, by the way. I forgot to mention that. And then the Vikings really just choked in the entire fourth quarter. That was when the Jets scored their touchdown. And the Jets were the ultimate chokers, though. Down 5, have the ball in the red zone the first time, fumble. Have the ball, then the Vikings punt it from their own, I believe it was like the 3-yard line. That's how close the Jets were to scoring a touchdown. And they can't settle for a field goal, obviously. Then the Jets have it again. They drive inside the red zone, 19-yard line, interception, game over. Jets lose. So they had multiple opportunities to win this game, have a shocking upset over the potentially Super Bowl contending Vikings, and they just could not pull it off. But my main takeaways from this were that the Jets should definitely be considered a legitimate contender for a wildcard spot. I think this whole season they've really just proved time and time again that they are a solid team.
Yeah.
They beat multiple very good teams, and this really hasn't been a fluke at this point. Even with Mike White at the helm at quarterback. And for the Vikings, they just need to improve on finishing games and need to clean all this sloppiness up before playoff time.
I agree. I think that's a solid analysis of the game. I do think the Jets are legit despite their loss. It almost was an upset of the Vikings, which would have been pretty incredible. But just one thing about your talking about the game, you said that there was a fumble on their second to last offensive possession, right? Was it a fumble or was it?
It might have been a turnover on downs, actually.
Yeah, I think it was turnover on downs, fourth downs. I think Braxton Berrios dropped a would-be touchdown pass in the end zone, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But I don't mean to undermine your analysis.
No, I mixed it up. My bad.
No, you're good. Don't worry. I mean, same thing. They ended up turning the ball over, so I guess it doesn't really matter. All's well that ends poorly, I guess, for the Jets. But unfortunate stuff. I hope New York football can turn it around, but we will see. All right, Miguel, it's that time of night. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, I think your time on the show with us is coming to an end. What are you gonna do? No tears. No tears. You'll be on again soon. Don't worry, okay? All right. Well, thank you so much, Miguel, for joining us and being our first recurring guest. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a good night.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night.
Thank you. Oh, parting is such sweet sorrow. All right. Miguel was a great reoccurring guest. I'm so glad he was our first one. I think it went well, despite the coughing fit. It was good timing with the stardom situms. Can't emphasize that enough. But all right, you guys know what time it is. The moment you've been waiting for. Last minute with Lily. Woo, woo, woo. All right, it's time. Gonna get my 1 minute timer up. Okay. Starting now. Atlanta Falcons quarterback Marcus Mariota was benched for rookie Desmond Ridder after Atlanta's loss to the Steelers on Sunday. And all I can say is, Marcus, you better find another job because the Falcons are going to get ridder of you sooner or later. Pittsburgh Penguins star veteran defenseman Chris Letang, who suffered a stroke just 10 days ago, has already returned to practice. And I know he's a Penguin, not a Steeler, but this really proves that Tanger is a man of steel. That's toughness right there, seriously. Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver George Pickens was seen during Sunday's game against the Falcons yelling, "Throw me the freaking ball," after he was barely targeted by Kenny Pickett. A selfish yet incredibly talented Steelers wide receiver. When have we seen this before? Antonio Brown. Former first-round pick and Browns and Panthers quarterback Baker Mayfield is now the Rams starting quarterback. This shows just how desperate the Rams are to pick up a guy like Baker. But at least he's better than John Wolford. Almost got through it with no mess-ups. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I'm sorry about the squeaky voice. Sorry about the coughing, but I think Miguel was a good guest, so it made up for it. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please come back next week. Bye, guys.